Welcome to Grid Talk. My name is Ruby, and today we're taking a look at the lineup for the 2025 Formula One season. Joining me today, we have Grid Talk's Owain Medford
Hello.
and Monkey Seats' Tom Horrox.
Hello.
Before we get into the episode, we must thank our sponsor for this episode, Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. And be sure to follow us on social media at Grid Talk UK. And if you're feeling extra generous, please consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive access and behind the scenes content. So after 0 changes to the grid between 23 and 24, F1 is all change for 2025. 3 teams opting for consistency and with it the potential of stability, whilst the remaining 7 have 1 or even 2 new drivers joining the fold. So Tom, let's start off with one of the teams opting for the stability of the same driver lineup. McLaren have got Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri contracted until beyond 2025, and we've seen a very strong pairing in 2024. Is this the strongest partnership of the grid for next season?
Yeah, I think it's a very strong lineup. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the strongest. I think that the experience of Max and no, I'm joking. The experience of Leclerc and Hamilton, I think, provided Hamilton lines gets integrated well into that Ferrari lineup. I think on paper, certainly that's going to be the strongest lineup. I just think that there's not a lot between Norris and Leclerc. I think they're both have incredible peaks, but susceptible to the odd mistake. And you put Sainz against Piastri, and that's probably a pretty similar barometer at the moment. But against Hamilton, I think it's that puts for me Ferrari's lineup just slightly ahead. But it's a great position to be in. And in a couple of years' time, with the decline of Hamilton and the rise of Piastri, it's going to be fun to see which lineup comes out on top there. But I think Piastri's peak potentially might be higher than what Hamilton's level will be in a year or two, which is exciting. I do think I'm excited to see with Piastri just how we go with this. Is this going to be that he's just on this path? But I feel like he's just so consistent. He has this level, which is an incredible F1 driver, and it's just kind of there all the time. He never wavers from that. But then Norris has these peaks where he's just in a different class altogether. We saw that in Singapore. Yeah, in other races, he's been much more on par with Piastri. There's been nothing between them. I've not seen a race weekend where Piastri has comprehensively outperformed Norris ever. There's always been things in the way of that. So, but it's just whether Piastri is going to get better and better and better, or if he's just a really well-rounded Formula One driver already. So that's the interesting thing for me. I'm sure once we add experience to it, it's gonna push him even higher. But Norris I think he's been woken up by Oscar. I don't think he expected him to be quite this strong. And hopefully it'll push Norris on as well to be the next talent for McLaren, because I'm definitely here for this McLaren lineup, and I just hope it stays combustible. Or rather non-combustible. I hope it doesn't blow up in the face, because that would be the worst thing, to have one of those drivers pushed out in bad circumstances. So yeah, all good for McLaren for next year. It's looking exciting for him.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of memes suggesting that McLaren thought they were signing a Bottas, but have actually signed a Rosberg, in terms of like obviously having 2 drivers on par with each other. And certainly Oscar Piastri has impressed in what is only his second F1 season as well, bearing in mind. But looking at another team then, sticking with the same driver lineup for next year, Owain, Red Bull will be fielding the Verstappen-Perez combo once again, although there are rumours that Perez might not actually get to keep his seat based on performance. Regardless, the team have had something of a backward step in terms of performance, and next year won't have a car designed by Adrian Newey. Might this be a problem for the team that managed to win all but 1 race in 2023?
I think it's 100% problem. It's a problem now. We've been wondering how Perez is still in the seat currently. I think Red Bull have maybe erred too much on the side of not wanting to upset their star driver. And I think that's costing them. I mean, it is costing them. Perez is 100% costing them, with his finishing positions, picking up, 1 point last race and barely anything, before that. They're sort of really underperforming the car, basically. The deficit to Max is quite high. And we've heard things about the car performance where Max was getting round it. But, in a team, you're only as fast as your slowest member. That's how it should be. And I think, they're over relying on Max to do the business as he did the year prior, but now with the field compacting so much, the deficit that Perez has to Max is now being visibly shown, and they're not convincingly winning everything else to offset that in a way that they can, overcome the driver's title. Overcome the deficit and keep winning that constructors title. That's where the money comes from. I'm not under any impression that Red Bull is, not going to be well funded, but it's one of those things. It certainly makes it a lot easier, particularly with maybe I don't want to talk too much about it, but like the sort of change at the top of Red Bull after Djuricic Matasic's death and things like that. Like it seems to be quite in an uncertain place, and the sort of usual stability of the performance of the Formula One team is being degraded, and I think it rests mostly on Perez's head. I don't know why they've chosen to keep him in that seat when there are other options. They've exhausted a lot of them, but clearly they're still moving people about. And surely you would try someone else rather than keep Perez in the seat, who is making you hemorrhage points and costing you a lot of money compared, in the budget cap. In a budget era, you can't have someone who's, relatively consistently being put into barriers and things like that and breaking parts. So I think it's 100% going to be a problem. And this doesn't even take into account the fact that Nui's gone. Although to be honest, it seems like he went because they weren't overly listening to him anyway. I mean, I wouldn't want to rely on one guy. We can see the problem that you have with the driver lineup if you do that. But on the other hand, it's going to. I think it's going to significantly degrade their performance going forward. Maybe, and I think it may well be better for the team in the long run from a organisational side. But I think in the next couple of years, it's going to be really, really hard graft for them to get back to where they should be. To building a car that last year, as you say, won all but one race and was statistically the most dominant car in F1 history.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Sergio Perez, he's the only driver in the top 8 of the driver standings to have not won a race this season, the only driver in the top 4 teams to have not won a race this season. And he's 8th in the championship whilst his teammate is 1st. This isn't 2023 anymore. And there are other drivers that could potentially be linked to that seat. But early in 2024, F1 was shocked by the announcement that Lewis Hamilton would be joining Ferrari at the end of the season. Tom, he's going to be driving alongside Charles Leclerc. How do you see him faring in a new team environment? And most importantly, not in a Mercedes for the first time in his career?
It's going to be weird for him, and from a sentimentality basis, he's going to find it weird not having the 3-pronged star on his uniform. But I don't think the engine performance itself. We're at the end of the rules cycle. There's been a huge amount of convergence, and there's not an awful lot between 3 of the engines, at least in Formula One, or the powertrains in Formula One. So unless he was sitting there with a Renault badge on, I don't think he'll be particularly concerned on that side of things. They're all very, very much similar in power delivery as well. So I don't think you have any issues from that side. It might just be a couple of process changes, a couple of little tweaks he'll have to make in his driving style occasionally. I think it would be good for him. It'd be a good fresh challenge. I think he's probably gone a little bit stale at Mercedes. Hopefully that he'll get that bounce effect of a new team and push on and lift his performance, because let's be honest, this has not been his most stellar year. But when you're used to winning things with Mercedes, going into Ferrari, he'll just want to do as well as possible. Whereas in Mercedes, as well as possible was pretty much a failure because he reached almost perfection there at times. So I think he'll do fine. I don't think he'll underestimate Charles Leclerc, but he definitely shouldn't underestimate Charles Leclerc, because Charles Leclerc, if he thinks that he's got troubles with George in qualifying, then he's going to have problems with Leclerc. I think Leclerc will comprehensively out-qualify him, so he's going to have to. It's going to be Prost Lauda from the 80s. It's going to be that kind of dynamic, and it's just, can he keep his peaks? I still think his peaks and consistency over a season, he probably can beat Charles Leclerc, because Leclerc does go missing occasionally in seasons for a couple of races here and there. But that's where it's got to come down to, is I think it's more going to be down to Leclerc than Hamilton. So it's going to be a tough dynamic there. It's going to be hard. I think there's going to be times when he's going to question his own ability, but I'm confident he'll come back strong and he'll be. I don't think he'll beat Leclerc in his first season. I said this when he signed, and a few people said to me, "Oh no, you're underestimating Lewis Hamilton." There, and I think no, I think you're underestimating Charles Leclerc. I think he's a phenomenal talent. In 2025, I think Leclerc will have him, but 26 is a different story. New rules is who prepares best, who is most adaptable. So I think that's provided Hamilton stays at the same level he's at now. That's going to be a close year, 26.
Yeah, and certainly hoping for a better transition between teams than Sebastian Vettel going to Aston Martin, for example. But Owain, Ferrari were the team battling Red Bull most of all in 2022 and 23. And we've seen a mixed bag of performance from the Scuderia in 2024, but some very strong races and wins, more importantly. But with this driver pairing, could 2025 finally be the year Ferrari maybe bring home a championship for the first time since 2008?
I honestly don't think so. In my opinion, I think it's McLaren's to lose, really. I think that the new driver pairing is going to be somewhat better. I think you get added speed, added one lap and added race pace just a little bit from Lewis Hamilton, and you also get a lot of experience there. And hopefully that's not creeping into sort of being set in your ways sort of thing on Lewis's side. I mean, Charles Leclerc is maturing every day. He's still, he's widely regarded as quite possibly the fastest single lap qualifier in Formula One, which used to be a title reserved for Hamilton. And I think you get that sort of, you get the mix of champion's ability to see out a championship, and learn how to get the best out of, to still learn and get the best out of the car. As much as it's going to be a transition, but I expect that to be sort of, what's the word? I expect that to be relatively smooth, given that they're all professionals there. And I think it's sort of well known that, not well known, but I feel like Charles Leclerc is sort of should know at least that Lewis is coming in, and it is a last hurrah. It's not like it's going to overtake the team, but I think that sort of is going to bring them up the grid in terms of consistency and being able to get the best out of the car and things like that. But I don't think it's going to be to the level where they're able to consistently fight for the championship. They've seemed sort of good in the past sort of couple of years of going for single races, getting Monaco and getting Monza, but they don't seem to be able to build the car in such a way that it's good for to build the highest average of all the tracks and win a championship that way. That's how, in my opinion, that's how you win it. You have to be the average best across all the tracks, and they don't seem quite able to build the car to do that as of yet. But then again, it's a mature rule cycle, and maybe they're building in things into 2025's car that they can't put onto this car.
Ferrari being the team that if there was no longer a budget cap and you could put as much money as you wanted into each race, probably could design a car for each single race on the calendar, But from Hamilton's destination then to his departure, Tom, let's take a look at Mercedes. I know you and Carl have had a debate as to the potential of Antonelli on the Monkey Seat podcast, but Mercedes bringing in a rookie to a team that aim for world championships, aim for wins, and most crucially are aiming for that consistency they once had between 2014 and 2021. Is Antonelli the right decision for Merck, and what can we really expect from him?
Well, I'm hoping for quite a lot because my betting streak at the moment is 2 for 2. So I'm aiming for a third on Antonelli. Otherwise, naked podcasting, not good. So I think he'll be fine. Like we've seen from what people have done in one-off performances. I mean, dare I say, Nick de Vries in Monza in 22. But what we've seen from Oliver Behrman and what we've seen when other drivers recently have just stepped in, solid performances from rookies in 2020 when he had Fittipaldi comes in, does a decent job. And we've seen that the rookies can come in and do a good job. And I think that's what Mercedes needs for next year. If it's their last chance to win a championship in this turbo hybrid, this rule cycle, I think they need the 1-2 Red Bull approach. And I'm not saying that for any moment that Antonelli is going to be a number 2, because we saw from his practice performance, his very brief practice performance, that he's going to be going 100% all the time. So he's going to be tough to beat, but I think he will make mistakes, as will George. But I think George will be the more consistent driver. Antonelli may, on occasion, be quicker than Russell. He might quite frequently be quicker than Russell. But I just think that Russell's got the experience there. But he will be the guy that they will be trying to win races with right off the bat. Antonelli might win some races, as we've seen from Hamilton this year. Wins a couple of races in special circumstances and just has the best car occasionally. So I think we'll see that from Mercedes next year. I'm hoping it's going to be a classic year where we have 4 teams genuinely fighting out on pace, not one way out in front and then everyone else trying to close in on them for the rest of the season. I think we'll genuinely have a back and forth season. I can't see Red Bull building such a Jekyll and Hyde car next year. I'm sure they'll have something a much more consistent plane to work from. So they'll be back next year. I won't write them off at your peril, even without Adrian Newey. But I can just see this. This might be the lineup that Mercedes end up. It would be good for George Russell. He'll win more races with Antonelli as a teammate next year than he will with Hamilton. But will he be able to get on top of him overall? And we can see where this is leading. If he does do a Piastri and comes in as a similar level to Russell right off the bat, come the end of year one, that they're both out of contract and they're not going to kick Antonelli to the curb after blooding him very early in the team. It's George is going to be the one that goes if they have a chance of getting Max Verstappen or someone similar. So I think for George, it's a big season. He has to really show that he's the team leader and to push forwards and prove that he is the driver that they want to back long term. And he's going to have to hope that Antonelli has quite a few FP1 performances like he did in Monza, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And building on that then, Owain, obviously some of the points that Tom's just raised, across the garage from the promising youngster Antonelli is George Russell, who Mercedes will now be looking to lead the team. He was obviously the lead driver whilst at Williams, but up against Latifi and Kubica, that's kind of expected. But now with the weight of Mercedes firmly on his shoulders, do you think he can deliver?
I mean, the evidence of F2 says that perhaps not, but I don't think they would have gone to the effort of getting him if they didn't think that he could perform. I mean, obviously they're not going to be expecting race wins, but very clearly they're confident in him. And I think it might be a case of, as much as it was a P1 sort of a P1 performance to forget in Monza, I think it might be a case of once bitten, twice shy, to be honest. In some ways it's high pressure because of the environment, but I don't think it's so much high pressure in terms of the expectation. They understand you're bringing in a rookie who's not even completed his first year in F2. I think there's an element of it where you can sit there and go, well, you're expecting him to, run into a few things and be quite a relatively exuberant driver. In that way, I think it's probably going to be all right for him. As long as he understands his role and that sort of thing, I genuinely think he'll be all right.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about understanding his roles and, not going for things 110% of the time, as we saw in Monza. But no change then for the green machines of Aston Martin in terms of drivers, and with Newey on gardening leave until he can work on the car for 2026, where Aston will be on performance really is a bit of a mystery. But Tom, we've seen the Silverstone outfit fall backwards from their strong start to last season, and with Alonso and Stroll driving the cars, where do you see them getting to in 2025?
Fifth. Next question. No, I know he's going to have absolutely no bearing at all on the 2025 car. He's going to be starting March 25, and then his sole job is going to be optimizing the 26 regulations. So I can't see Aston moving forwards next year. They might get a bit closer to the back of the 4. They might come under a little bit of pressure from someone like Alpine. Sorry, I nearly choked there on my invisible drink. But it's possible that Alpine might get their act together. Who knows? Haas really stepped on this year. It's a massive surprise to me. You never know who's gonna push into that fight. But I think Aston are in the strongest position to remain 5th. I think that's got to be their target. You say strong start to 23. I say bad start for 23 for Ferrari and Mercedes and McLaren. So those teams not delivering really did bolster Aston Martin's position. They just optimized where they were at the time. And it led to some strong points performances and probably Alonso elongating his career by a couple more years. I think it's such a difficult thing with it. Like Alonso, he's spent his entire life waiting for the next rule cycle and it never seems to pan out. And with Newey in the team, is it going to make a difference for 26? I don't think so. Not a huge difference. Maybe sort of 27 second set of rules once they've learned a lot more. Newey finding some grey areas to exploit. You might see Aston Martin step into championship contention for 27. But I mean, how old is Fernando Alonso going to be then? 45? Are you really going to put your money on Lance Stroll leading the team to a championship? I'm sure that given a dominant car, he'll see out races and win races. But I can't see him pushing for a championship with any driver who's worth anything alongside him, to be honest. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be much of the same for them for next year.
Yeah, and for me, it's one of the least inspiring driver lineups that we've had since Haas 2021. But speaking of inspiring, if you enjoy this podcast, we'd love it if you could take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're one of the 72% of people who aren't yet subscribed to the channel, please consider helping us out with a like and a subscribe. So moving back on then to the rest of the grid. Change already for the rest of 2024 for VCarb. The Red Bull Junior outfit actually now fielding a Red Bull Junior driver in Liam Lawson after dropping Daniel Ricciardo after the Singapore Grand Prix. But still without a seat for 2025. Owain, is this Liam Lawson's chance to prove himself for the empty VCarb seat alongside Yuki Tsunoda?
I almost think it's the chance for him to prove himself for Perez's seat, to be quite honest. If he's just that little bit, but he's clearly a very good driver, and he's done a lot of work, developing, in the simulator for Red Bull, I believe, fixing their setup on some weekends. But I genuinely think that he's going to outperform Tsunoda quite easily, which is why I sort of led in with how I did. I genuinely think it's his opportunity to solve the quandary that Red Bull seem to have. And I'm kind of assured, in my own mind, I'm kind of assured that he's going to have the seat by the end of the year. Like he's got 6 races to prove himself. All he has to do is sort of do better sort of pro rata than Tsunoda's done in the preceding 18 races. Is it? Have I done my maths right? Gosh, it's a long season. Yeah, no, it's for me. It's nailed on that he's going to. Yes, it's his chance to prove himself, but I think he's going to get it no matter what. I don't think Red Bull have too many other drivers they can call upon, and I think Lawson is probably the most exciting. They clearly don't want to bring along Tsunoda. I don't think he's made the development that they expected. Whereas, maybe Lawson can, and I think he's got quite a good possibility of doing it. So yeah, that's where I see Lawson. I see him in the seat for next year, and perhaps in the top team seat.
Well, if 2024 doesn't work out for him, they could always put Ricciardo back in once again for the 3rd time. But then taking a chance on a whole new lineup for the first time since 2021, Haas have a Ferrari junior driver, Ollie Behrman, and former Mercedes junior Esteban Ocon as their driver duo for 2025. Tom, we've seen Ollie sub in twice this season, and he impressed enough to warrant a full-time seat. Is this finally a rookie that Haas don't have to worry about too much?
Yeah, I think so. I think he'll be absolutely fine. He was, I know, like obviously Owain said earlier about Antonelli's not impressed that much in F2, but you've got to look at Ollie Behrman in 2022 in F2 was phenomenal. Sorry, 23 was phenomenal. He was by far the best rookie, in my opinion anyway, or certainly was very, I think he won more races than anyone else that year. I could have that stat slightly wrong, but he won a lot of races, and then just the change in rules and Prema just not getting it right, and he was nowhere, and Antonelli seemed like a match for Behrman. I know Behrman missed out on a couple of races for doing Formula One, but it's still really strong performance. And I think it's a really interesting stat I heard. I can't quote the source. I'm sorry. It's probably Sean Kelly, but it was that he's the first driver to score points in his first 2 races for different teams, which is a very abstract fact, I know. But the fact that he scored points in a Ferrari in his debut was impressive enough, given the location. And then to go into a similar location and score points in a Haas, that's really strong. I know he's driven that car a lot more as well. He's done a lot of FP1s in that car, so he's got a bit of experience to it. But like, he matched Nico Hülkenberg as well. I know Hülkenberg probably should have beaten him in the race, but it was an issue with yellow flags and him in wrong settings. He ended up losing the position last minute. But as well, Behrman was disappointed in that race because he was told to overmanage the tyres, and then was told to push when he had far too much tyre life left in it. So Hülkenberg passed him on track because he was told to overmanage his tyres. So he wasn't particularly happy about that. He thinks he could have kept Hülkenberg behind him. So I think it's a strong position for Haas to be in. Finally, they've got a really strong driver. I mean, obviously they had Hülkenberg. How it works with Ocon, I'm not sure. I guess we'll find out, but it's going to be divisive, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Ocon, then Owain, alongside Behrman, will be Ocon, who historically has had a number of run-ins with teammates, but is definitely a fast driver capable of performing under pressure and has race wins to his name. Is this a chance for Ocon to finally put his reputation behind and reinvent himself?
I mean, for the third time, yeah, it would be. Yeah, no, he's sort of bandied about from, what is it, Mercedes junior driver, or in that fold at least, in in the Force India, and then obviously being at Alpine more recently. I think, yeah, it's another reset. You get sort of other chances, and to be fair, the Haas is seemingly at this stage in the season, it's actually seeming to be quite performant. So as long as that continues, I think he has got that ability he's the more experienced driver, he's the older driver. In theory, he should be a little bit more consistent. Although, as you say, he's run into a lot of people, so maybe some situational awareness might be needed. But apart from that, I think it's just that one more chance for a reset, and you can see how he's sort of midway through his career. I don't think he's necessarily going to be ending up in a top team or anything like that. But I'd love to be surprised. As you say, he's got race wins to his name, which is it's always what you want to get above. But I think getting the Haas consistently into the top half of the championship is sort of his role, really. And as someone who has been in teams that the sort of teams that have been having to fight for every point, he'll sort of understand that, and I think he'll be an asset to the team.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm thinking as well of Ocon's, arrival in Haas. More of an opportunity than a sort of punishment for not performing with Alpine, and it is a step up in terms of constructors, despite one team having significantly more history. But speaking of teams with history, James Vowles' Williams outfit was the final destination for Ferrari outcast Carlos Sainz, who will be alongside Alex Albon. Tom, it's no Ferrari, but was this the best option left for Sainz? And how do you think his arrival at Williams will impact his new teammate, Alex Albon?
Well, I think it was, if he's not in a Ferrari, which, let's be honest, was his first choice, then he wants to be in a Mercedes or a Red Bull. That was never going to happen for reasons that still baffle me. I feel like both of those teams should have taken Carlos Sainz if the opportunity was there. But there we go. They didn't. They went with their own options. And I think if you believe what is being said about the Mercedes PU for 2026, he needs a Mercedes engine. If he's not in a Mercedes, he needs to be in a Mercedes powered car. And you probably bet Williams would be the second, like in 2014. You'd think that Williams would be the team that would be able to bring the thunder, for want of a better phrase, above the other teams. Like, if Alpine end up a Mercedes custom, obviously Aston Martin are going to Honda. So are you going to say who's going to do a better job out of Williams or Alpine? I think you're probably going to say Williams. So I think it was definitely the last option. It's the last good option he had, but there were definitely better options on the table, and I think he'll be disappointed. He's definitely disappointed that those options didn't come to the fore. I think it's going to put a bit of pressure on Alex Albon, because in a different scenario, Carlos Sainz signs for Mercedes or Red Bull. They sack Logan Sargent, bring in Franco Colapinto. All of a sudden, they've got a strong lineup for next season in Colapinto and Albon. But now with Colapinto doing so well, if he continues on this trajectory, being close to Alex Albon or even outperforming him towards the end of the season, Sainz and Albon comes in, Colapinto in the wings as the reserve driver. That's a lot of pressure, and I just feel like this has maybe taken the shine off what Albon's reputation in the paddock was, because he was being talked about as someone that should be looked at by top teams again because he's matured. And I think the opportunity is now gone. I think this is probably why he signed this long contract with Williams, because I think this is his last real chance now to push on and score some good results in Formula One, because he's Carlos Sainz, more experienced, probably, in my opinion, at the very least equal, if not a higher ceiling than Albon. So if they really want to put in Colapinto, it's going to be difficult to see who they're going to give up on, the one that they just backed with a load of money, or the person that they brought back into Formula One and gave another chance. It's going to be a fascinating season to see how this pans out, because it is a bit up in the air, and in something that 6 months ago you'd have thought, well, Albon's nailed on there, he's there for as long as they want him, but maybe not. It might be that in 18 months' time he's or even a year's time, he might be under pressure and could be looking at other options again.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, Alex Albon's entire sort of Williams career has been in comparison to drivers that we've not really seen the best of, or maybe we have seen the best of, and it's just not been that high. But now, obviously, he's got that, multiple race winner and Ferrari outcast joining him. That's a much higher, bar of comparison. So yeah, absolutely, concerning potentially for Alex Albon's career, but hopefully he's done enough to build his stock and be a reputable F1 driver for more years to come. But and then 2024's disappointment for Alpine is not what Pierre Gasly would have had in mind when he left the Red Bull family, but he's muscled out his teammate Ocon, and next season will be their lead driver alongside F1 rookie Jack Doohan. Can Pierre Gasly lead the French team?
I think it helps that, well, in the past, it would have helped that he was French, there's that element to it. But I think Alpine's always seemed a bit of a rocky place to be. And, he seemed to have weathered out that storm a little bit better than Ocon did. Or maybe Ocon jumped ship at a better time. Yeah, I just feel like with Alpine, he may lose that. Well, it seems a team in turmoil, which is not something I expected to say about a manufacturer-backed team, and it's just one of those things where I think he has to. I think he has to lead the team. He's midway through his career. He's shown elements of high performance and good performance, but ultimately, he's now paired with quite a promising young driver, and for all of its faults, the Alpine Young Driver Academy seems to produce some good graduates out of it. So I think he has to sort of lean on all of his experience, because otherwise he's not sort of, he's on a multi-year deal, but those can go away. Teams will find a way, and if he's sort of not in favour so much when if there is new ownership that comes in or anything like that, or you get the turmoil of an engine deal that goes different than how they expect, or sale of the team or anything like that, you kind of don't want to be looked at as an old piece of furniture that people can get rid of, compared to Jack Doohan, who is coming in as the sort of the new promising young star for that team. Ultimately, I think it's going to be difficult for him, but he's got some experience and he needs to make full use of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Jack Doohan, Tom, you've been a long time pusher of Jack to take up that seat in Alpine. Even in 2022, I think there was a short we put out where you were saying he was the man for the job. He's been their reserve driver, so is well acquainted with the team, but can he start on the front foot and cement himself in F1 for years to come?
It's a really good memory. It's a really strong memory on that. I did say that, didn't I? That was off the back of a Formula 3 season that was just utterly terrible and pointless, literally pointless, didn't score a single point and was just constantly moaning over the radio. And then he had his Formula 3 season the following year was much more solid. I think he won the championship. And then going into F2, I think that's when I put the short out then, saying, look out for him. He might well be the real deal. He was okay in Formula 2. He wasn't quite as good as I thought he'd be, but he did enough to put himself in the shop window. But I thought he'd missed his shot because he wasn't racing in F2 last year. And I thought if he's not being seen, he's not being thought about. But I think Alpine just ran out of options. Genuinely, I just don't think they weren't able to convince Carlos Sainz. They fell out with Ocon. I don't think they sacked Ocon. I think Ocon chose to leave. You could see the writing on the wall. I think Gasly's probably getting a bit of buyer's remorse for that contract as well. So I think it's of course, Piastri as well. I completely forgot about Piastri and Alonso. And so I feel like it's kind of like, well, we've got to put someone in from the Alpine junior team, or what's the point in having it? So I think he's done enough to deserve a shot. And we've seen with Colapinto coming in without a massive pedigree that he can do well. So if he can do something in the similar vein, then it's fine. It will be a better lineup for team harmony. If the team makes a step forward, then it'll be fine. Gasly, I think, is a very accomplished, experienced Formula One driver now, so I'd be surprised if he can match him. But certainly after a couple of seasons, he might be able to. But yeah, I think he has got a chance of making that seat his own. In answer to your question, I think he's with that team, they're not being particularly ambitious at the moment. So he could end up being this stalwart guy who gets 7 seasons under his belt and kind of hangs around in the midfield when you barely notice him. Or he could go into that team and do a phenomenal job, outperform Pierre Gasly and get picked up by Red Bull and then be the next challenger to Max Verstappen. It's very possible. There's a lot of options open to him. So I'm glad he's got his shot anyway, but I'm not convinced 100% he's going to be like the real deal, but he's certainly done enough to deserve a chance to prove that.
Yeah, absolutely. Finally then, Owain, let's look at Sauber, who, while still pointless in 2024, will be hoping that bringing in the experience of Nico Hülkenberg will put an end to their struggles before finally becoming Audi in 2026. Is he the cure to kick that team back on track?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I mean, Hülkenberg is a fast qualifier and decent over a season, it seems. He's done fairly well for Haas, and to be fair, they are doing well with him now. But Sauber's complete capitulation more recently has just been. I mean, they haven't done so much. I can't remember a time where I think the last time that Sauber were really were really good was 12 years ago. It was a long time. That we're talking Perez era. The difference is they won't be a privateer team anymore. They'll be. I can't remember where we are in the Audi news cycle of whether the board sort of really wants to be all in or anything like that. But the fundamental thing is that they will be okay from a funding perspective. They're going to have a works engine that's their engine, which opens up an awful lot of opportunities for you. It makes certain things easier. You get the information early about what you're going to have to package around and things like that. And you know what? I've just realised I'm talking about 2026 and we're not talking about 2025. It's one of I think that says a lot. We're still. I mean, maybe it's me being like, we're just waiting for the Audi money and waiting for Audi to come in and all that. But I think they're the bottom rung of the privateer teams. Haas are more performant right now. Yeah. I've just hit the cliches, but they're the bottom rung of the Ferrari powered performant teams, and it's just like I don't see anywhere going up right now. I think you lose the rookie in theory, but apart from that, I don't. You get Nico Hülkenberg, and he's been okay, but he's not been amazing, and he hasn't been amazing for years. So I think midfield is the best they could hope for.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of round it off then, Tom, the second Sauber seat is still up for grabs. There's rumours of Ferrari youngsters. Williams rookie Franco Colapinto's in the picture. Current driver Valtteri Bottas, 24th potentially in a 24 driver championship somehow. Given Sauber's shocking performance in 2024, do they chance a rookie? Or do they need that experience?
Well, they've got the experience in Hülkenberg, and I disagree with Owain slightly. I think Nico Hülkenberg has proven that he's still a phenomenal racing driver. I think he's everything that outfit needs. But the Audi outfit isn't here until 2026, and 2025 is a bit of a throwaway year. So why not chance it on a rookie? I mean, it seems like it seems criminal that Valtteri Bottas doesn't end up in Formula One when the music stops, which does seem insane. But I would think if Bortoleto were to win the Formula 2 championship, he's proven Piastri levels of dominance there, winning F3 and winning F2 and showing lots of performance. So I think that would be the one for me, because you blood him in for a year and then come 26, if it doesn't work out with him, then you just bring someone else in. And they've got the money to do that. And I think there'll be a lot more options available to them. Signing a rookie on a 1-year deal is a zero risk strategy for a team like Sauber in 2025. In 2026, taking on a rookie, they don't really want to do that. They want experience or an exciting young talent that's got a season under their belt. So I feel like the time's just run out for Bottas. I think they might go for Bottas because they'll see that that's the strongest lineup on the day. But I don't think it's the best thing for the Audi outfit, and Audi are the team that are going to be running it in a year's time. I think their sway will take priority. So I fear it's the end of the road for Valtteri Bottas.
The end of the road for Valtteri Bottas. Sentence to sum up 2024. Absolutely. So you've heard from our panel. Now let's hear what the rest of Grid Talk thought would be the most exciting driver move for 2025.
The 2025 driver move that I'm most excited about is Oliver Bearman to Haas. Obviously joining the team from Formula 2, but he's already had a couple of outings in Formula 1 this season, doing very well for Ferrari in Saudi Arabia, deputising for Carlos Sainz and stepping in for Kevin Magnussen when he was banned for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. I followed his Formula 2 career pretty closely, and I just think he has that X factor of speed, and he's been backed by Ferrari. There was a lot of Ferrari juniors to be picked from at the time. Arthur Leclerc was one of them, and he sort of fell by the wayside in that sense. Ferrari have put their backing behind Bearman, and I'm really excited to see what he can do in a Haas with a full season and see what it does for his career prospects, potentially ahead of a move to Ferrari.
Hey everyone, so the driver transfer that I'm looking forward most to seeing in 2025, aside from Sir Lewis going to Ferrari, because that would absolutely be my number one, but my number two is Kimi Antonelli going to Mercedes. Obviously, he's going to Mercedes to replace Sir Lewis. He's a rookie, he's very young, he's very exciting, a bit inconsistent in F2, but the kid has massive potential, and seeing him go up against George Russell will be a fascinating battle in 2025, I reckon.
Well, George, I'm always excited to see rookies on the grid, especially Bearman being locked in now. But for me, it's Sainz to Williams. It's the first time in a long time that they've had a driver pairing they can lean on. And now, with Sainz's experience, I reckon he could really help their resurrection. Especially in 26, that could be the opportunity Dalton were looking for to show how much capital they've got.
My choice of driver change I'm most looking forward to in 2025 would go to Andrea Kimi Antonelli. It's always good to see a rookie come into the sport anyway. To see an 18-year-old with such a highly respected back-in, with so much potential to come into a team the size of Mercedes, truly is an exciting prospect. Numerous good choices for next year, but Kim Antonelli would be my choice.
As much as I'm looking forward to all the young drivers making their debut next year, I think the biggest change that I'm excited to look forward to is Carlos Sainz to Williams. Obviously not his first choice of driver next year, but what does it do to the team landing such a big driver, and also Alex Albon as well, who's kind of been unchallenged these last few years in terms of teammates. I think they're going to really do well together and take the team forward.
Hi everybody, Kristen here. The driver change in 2025 that I am most looking forward to is that of Carlos Sainz going to Williams. And the reason this is because now we are going to have 2 seasoned veterans in those Williams seats. Carlos is a great strategist out there. And with Alex's intentionality and the knowledge that he already has of the Williams team underneath him, I think this could be an incredible combination. That with James Valls having led this team for several years now, if they can get that car underneath them, they could be looking at potentially being at the top of the midfield in most races. And so this is the team that I am most excited to watch in 2025.
The driver change I'm most looking forward to in 2025 is Kimi Antonelli to Mercedes. A very risky move by Mercedes, bringing in such a young and fairly unproven driver if we compare it to the likes of his future teammate George Russell, who came in as F3 and F2 champion. But there is so much hype behind Kimi Antonelli, and I can't wait to see what he does behind the wheel of that Mercedes.
Hi everybody. I personally think the most exciting driver change for next year is going to be Carlos Sainz going to Williams. It's going to be exciting to see how he fits with the team now with 2 experienced drivers as well. And I think it's going to be a good challenge for Alex as well. And a lot of the fans are going to see his real strength now compared with Sainz.
The driver lineup change I'm looking forward to most is the smooth operator Carlos Sainz joining Williams. There's been progress there with this team, especially with Colapinto joining Alex Albon. I know they're not the same team as they used to be in the past, but I think Carlos Sainz with Alex Albon, 2 cast-offs of Red Bull, will be a good combination.
Hi, Tom Horrox here from Grid Talk. Next season, I am most looking forward to seeing Nico Hülkenberg returning to what should be a big team in a couple of years' time in the Sauber-Audi partnership. 37 years old, this is really his last chance to throw the dice to try and get that elusive podium. He's always had great speed, and I'm really interested to see who his teammate is going to be as well, as it's going to be a big challenge for him, and he's really grown in my estimation in the last few years. I thought he was washed up. Clearly I was wrong, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in that car next year.
If you'd like to keep up to date with all of the Grid Talk happenings and listen to our shorts and engage with the podcast that way, then find us on socials. We're at Grid Talk UK on all of the social platforms with the @.
And Tom, anything you want to plug at this point?
You can go see Monkey Seat if you want. We occasionally record a podcast. We forgot this week. So once again, we seem to ignore it whenever Lando Norris wins a race. We never seem to do one. So, but yes, Monkey Seat, me and Carl just having fun talking about Formula One. So yeah, come and give us a listen.
Absolutely do that. And if you want to find anything more from me, I'm at Rubes001 on the Meta socials. But Grid Talk is available on YouTube, where episodes are recorded live, as well as Amazon Fire, Spotify, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalogue of shows, with previews and reactions to the race results. Thank you to Jared Bradley and Holly Eagle for supporting on Patreon. If you want to support the show further, why not sign up to our Patreon for exclusive content? Also, make sure you subscribe to be the first to know when each new episode is released. We'll be back soon with plenty more F1 content. Thank you very much for listening to the Grid Talk podcast, presented by Bet Online, and goodbye.